there's one thing that I keep hearing lately that's starting to drive me crazy. People are saying Airbnb is over, it's too late, and the market is oversaturated. You've seen the headlines. You've seen the YouTube thumbnails with the red arrows pointing down. You've heard about people talking about the Airbnb bust like it's a foregone conclusion. But here's the reality. The people saying Airbnb is dead are usually the same people who never start or finish anything. They're looking for an excuse to stay safe in their 9-to-5 jobs because the alternative, actually operating a business, requires a level of discipline that they just simply don't have. What's going on, guys? I'm Jovan. I operate 19 short-term rentals right now in 2026. I didn't stop growing because of a headline. I didn't stop growing because of a city council meeting. In fact, my business is more efficient now than when I first started. I spent 12 years in the federal government, from TSA to the Pentagon. And if there's one thing that the government teaches you, it's how to spot a system that is failing versus a system that is simply evolving. In this video, I'm going to show you why the Airbnb dead narrative is a lie, why my 19 units say otherwise, and why 2026 is actually a good year to enter the market if you're an architect, not a hobbyist. Now, we're not going to talk about hacks or get-rich-quick schemes. We're going to look at the facts. We're going to audit the noise and look at the actual numbers. Because if you're still on the sidelines waiting for the perfect time to start, then you've probably already lost. Let's start by acknowledging the noise. It's everywhere. Social media, the news, and especially in the comment sections of videos like this. The narrative is that the gold rush is over. And you know what? To a certain extent, they are right. The era of putting up listings with iPhone photos, mismatched furniture, and no pricing strategy and still making $5,000 a month. Now that version of Airbnb is absolutely dead. But that wasn't a business. That was just a fluke. People say the market is saturated because there are more hosts than ever. They see new city regulations in places like New York City or Dallas, Texas, and they assume that the entire industry is being shut down. They hear about hosts losing money and they assume that the vehicle is broken. But let's look at the logic behind those failures. Most of the people complaining right now are the ones who entered the market between 2021 and 2023 with a passive income mindset. They thought they can just set it and forget it. They didn't build protocols. They didn't use dynamic pricing. They didn't prioritize showroom quality design. They were pretty much tourists in an industry that was rapidly becoming institutional. When the market shifted, when the travel patterns normalized and the revenge travel surge slowed down, those tourists, they got hit. The people who weren't calculating their margins, the people who were overpaying for leases in bad markets, and the people who didn't have a system for guest experience started to bleed. Change doesn't mean dead. It means the barrier to entry has moved. In the federal government, when a protocol changes, the people who can't adapt are the ones who get left behind. It's the same thing here. The saturation isn't high quality units. It's in mediocre amateur listings. There is an oversupply of average, and the market is currently correcting that. If you are an architect, someone who builds infrastructure, audits data, and executes at a high level, the noise is actually your best friend. Why? Because the noise is scaring away your competition. It's clearing the field of the people who would have crowded your market with low-tier inventory. The narrative is a filter. It keeps the weak out so the operators can take the territory. So, if the numbers are still there, why are so many people struggling? Now let's look at the performance right now to prove the point. When people say that the market is dead, I don't argue with their opinions. I look at my ledger. Across my entire portfolio of 19 units, the data shows a consistent 80% occupancy rate. That means my properties are generating revenue 24 days out of every single month. If a business is occupied at 80% of the time, that isn't a dead industry. That is a high demand asset class. But as an architect, you have to understand that performance isn't a straight line. It fluctuates based on geography and climate. For example, my units in the Washington, D.C. area face a brutal off-peak season in January and February. It's winter. No one wants to be there. In Houston, those same months are also off peak, but the dip isn't as severe. Conversely, July and August are good months for Washington, D.C. area, but in Houston, we actually see nightly rates drop during that window. Why? Because the Texas heat is a deterrent. If you aren't auditing these seasonal shifts, you'll panic when your revenue dips. I don't panic because I've mapped the climate of my markets. I know when to lean in and I know when to adjust my expectations. Now let's look at the actual spread of a single unit. My very first unit is still active today. On its worst month, the floor, it brings in about $3,000 of revenue. On its best month, the ceiling, it has generated as much as $6,000 or $7,000. Now that is a 2x variance based on seasonality and events. If you only plan for the $6,000 months, you'll go out of business during the $3,000 months. You have to build a shift-proof budget that survives the floor so that you can profit from the ceiling. And when you scale into unique assets like my 14-bedroom compound in Houston, the protocol changes entirely. In a market saturated with one-bedroom units, you're fighting with everyone else. You have to find your specific tier, whether you're competing with high-end luxury stays or economy travelers, and price accordingly. But with a 14-bedroom home, there's virtually no competition. You have free reign over the pricing because you own the only asset of that size and probably that zip code. If I see a surge in bookings, I know my price is too low and I raise it. If it's quiet, I drop it. The software, like Price Labs, helps me dial in that base price, but the human audit is what captures the maximum margin. So, if the numbers are still there, why are so many people struggling? It's because the market has moved from amateur-friendly to professionally mandated. The most common mistake I see is the just here to sleep mentality. Amateur hosts think they're selling a bed and a box. They buy basic, boring furniture because they're afraid to spend money on decor that doesn't have an actual use case. They fail to realize that in 2026, you aren't selling just a room. You're selling an experience based off a photograph. Decor is what makes a guest stop scrolling. It's the difference between charging $100 a night and $200 a night. When you invest in showroom quality design, you aren't just spending money. You are literally doubling your revenue potential through visual authority. Another reason that hosts fail is that they can't do basic math. I see people sign a lease for $2,000 and tell themselves that their break even is $2,000. Now that's a dangerous way to think. By the time you add in utilities, platform fees, and a consistent refill of consumables such as toilet paper, detergent, paper towels, that $2,000 rent is actually a $2,600 monthly operating cost. That $600 gap might not seem like much on day one, but over a year, that's $7,200 in hidden costs that can wipe out your entire profit margin. If you don't calculate the true cost of the machine will eventually break you. Finally, people fail because they ignore the rules until it's too late. In Houston, we recently saw a major shift where short-term rental licenses became mandatory. I saw hosts who procrastinated on this until they had a huge orange warning plastered on their front door. Platforms like Airbnb, Booking.com, and VRBO are no longer playing games. They were prepared to wipe out every unlicensed unit off the map. If you aren't auditing the local laws and staying ahead of the compliance curve, you aren't an operator. You're basically just a squatter. And if you have the license and the unit, you have to outwork the algorithm. I audit my pricing software every other day for 30 minutes. Why? Because if everyone else is using the same software, then everyone has the same price. I go in manually and adjust for sweet spots, like offering a specific discount for stays of exactly 3 or 4 nights. While everyone else is stuck with the standard weekly or monthly discounts, I'm capturing guests who fall right in the middle. Now, I'm not smarter than the average host, I'm just more intentional. I audit the data that they simply ignore. Most people look at the market as getting harder and see a reason to quit. I look at it and see a reason to scale. In 2022, you could get lucky. In 2026, you have to be precise. And the tools available to us now makes precision easier than ever. As the industry has matured, the software has evolved into a full-scale institutional operating system. We now have AI integrated directly into our property management software. It's not just autoresponders anymore. It's agentic AI that understands guest intent, handles frequently asked questions, and manages communications in real time. We have accounting platforms like getclearing.co that are built specifically for the trust accounting needs of short-term rentals, helping you balance your books and track every dollar of leakage. We have Price Labs for hyper-local dynamic pricing and AirDNA for deal analysis that is far more accurate than the gut feel of just 4 years ago. There is no longer an excuse to be off your game. The infrastructure exists to turn a side hustle into a 24/7 automated machine. If you aren't using these, you aren't a host. You're a victim of the algorithm. Now here's the part that actually excites me right now. The thinning of the herd. If you look at the data on AirDNA, you can see it actively happening. The total number of active units is finally starting to drop in major markets. The supply growth that exploded in 2021 has decelerated. What we are witnessing is the survival of the fittest. The amateurs who wanted passive income without the work are failing, and they are leaving a massive gap in the market. And because they are failing, they are practically giving away their assets. I've been able to walk into units in the DC area that were already Airbnbs, where the host simply just gave up. They were basically giving away the furniture. I've had units where I walked in, updated the decor, changed the showroom quality protocol, and had it listed and profitable within 24 hours. The death of Airbnb is actually just the death of mediocre inventory. When a lazy host quits, they aren't just leaving the platform, they're handing it over the market share to the operators who are willing to do the audit. In 2026, the best properties win, and the ones who don't want to work lose. It's really that simple. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Lazy hosting is dead. A lazy host doesn't run pricing software. A lazy host doesn't prioritize response times. In my 19 units, I've automated my pricing through Price Labs so that it's running around the clock, and I only have to spend 15 to 30 minutes every other day to further dial in the strategy. And then there's the response gap. If a guest sends an inquiry and you respond an hour later, you've probably already lost the booking. I aim for a 1-minute response time. When a guest sees that level of responsiveness before they even book, they know that they're dealing with a professional. That trust is the most valuable currency in 2026. If you're still watching this, the question isn't whether Airbnb is dead. The question is whether you are mentally ready to take the next step. Starting this journey is half the battle. You have to get yourself mentally prepared to start a new journey, put yourself out there, and most importantly, not be afraid to make mistakes, because you will get things wrong. I've been in this space for years. I have multiple properties, and I'm still constantly learning. But here's the difference. As long as you're on platforms watching videos like this one, it means you're willing to learn. More than 90% of hosts are not willing to learn once they start. They get one unit, they get comfortable, and they stop checking for the market. If you are the type of person who's always looking for the next level of data, you aren't just a host, you are an operator. I could sit here and tell you what you want to hear, that Airbnb is easy, that you'll be rich in 30 days, but I'm not going to sit here and do that. That's what the tourist tells you right before they fail. What I will tell you is that Airbnb is not dead. Lazy hosting is dead. If you're willing to put in the work, learn the game, and treat this like a real business, 2026 is your year. The thin herd has left a gap in the market, the software has never been more powerful, and the path to the exit protocol is wide open for anyone with the discipline to follow it. If this video changed your perspective, please drop a comment and let me know. And if you're ready to actually start, go watch my beginner's guide to Airbnb arbitrage next. I break down exactly how to get your first unit with no property. I'll see you guys in the next one.